Your soulmate's family just discovered the secret love letter they wrote for you. It disappears in 5 minutes. There are moments in life that quietly reshape destiny before anyone realizes they have begun. They arrive without thunder, without warning, hidden inside ordinary afternoons and silent hallways. This story begins with one such moment, a folded letter resting beneath an old wooden jewelry box, protected by dust, time, and hope. The words inside were never intended for public eyes. They were written late one restless night by someone who had spent countless evenings pretending they were perfectly fine while secretly carrying a heart that belonged somewhere else. Every sentence had been rewritten again and again because no combination of words ever felt powerful enough to explain what they truly felt. The letter began with trembling honesty. If this reaches you someday, then perhaps courage finally defeated my fear. Those words alone carried months of hidden emotion. No names appeared anywhere in the letter. There were no dates. No signatures. Only memories described so carefully that the intended reader would immediately recognize them. It spoke about a rainy afternoon when two strangers shared an umbrella without speaking much. It remembered laughter echoing through an empty parking lot after a simple joke that wasn't even funny. It described the exact shade of sunset reflected inside someone's eyes during a quiet goodbye. Every memory was a confession disguised as storytelling. For months, the letter remained hidden. Every day the writer thought about delivering it. Every evening they lost their courage. Every morning they promised themselves, tomorrow. Tomorrow never arrived. Instead, destiny made another decision. One ordinary afternoon, while cleaning an old family cabinet, a relative accidentally knocked over the jewelry box. Several forgotten photographs scattered across the floor. Receipts. Birthday cards. Old movie tickets. Then, one folded envelope slid silently across the wooden floor. No one recognized it. Curiosity is powerful. Someone picked it up. Someone unfolded the paper. Someone read the very first sentence. Everything changed. Silence filled the room. At first they believed it was simply an old letter between friends. But as each paragraph unfolded, the emotional weight became impossible to ignore. This wasn't casual. This wasn't temporary. This was the deepest secret someone in their family had ever carried. Every sentence revealed years of hidden affection. Every memory described someone the family had never heard about before. Questions began appearing instantly. Who is this written for? When did this happen? Why didn't anyone tell us? No answers came. Only silence. The writer entered the room seconds later. One glance was enough. Their heart nearly stopped. The letter was no longer hidden. It was already open. Time seemed to freeze. No one spoke. The writer reached forward instinctively, hoping somehow the paper would disappear before anyone finished reading. Too late. Another page turned. Someone softly whispered. They've loved this person for a very long time. The room suddenly felt smaller. Breathing became difficult. The carefully protected secret had escaped forever. Meanwhile, Far away. The person this letter had always been meant for continued living an ordinary afternoon, completely unaware that somewhere else their existence had just become the center of an emotional storm. They had no idea someone had once written page after page describing how they unknowingly changed another person's life. They had no idea an entire family had just discovered that hidden truth. Fate has unusual timing. Sometimes two people can think about each other every single day while believing the other has forgotten them completely. Sometimes the greatest love stories survive only because neither person finds the courage to speak first. Inside the family home, emotions continued growing stronger. Some relatives smiled gently. Others worried. A few became protective. Questions transformed into debates. What if this person hurts them? What if they're already with someone else? What if it's too late? No one noticed the writer quietly standing near the doorway, unable to interrupt. Because how could they explain years of silence? How could they admit fear had become stronger than hope? Every heartbeat seemed louder than the conversation itself. Finally, one family member folded the letter carefully. Their expression softened. Instead of anger, there was understanding. If these feelings are real, they deserve a chance. Hope flickered. Only for a moment. Then something unexpected happened. A younger relative entered carrying a stack of papers collected during cleaning. Without realizing what had happened earlier, they reached toward the table, picked up the letter, mixed it into dozens of old documents, walked toward the recycling pile. No one noticed. Conversation continued. Opinions continued. The envelope disappeared beneath magazines, newspapers, and unwanted bills. Outside, the garbage truck was scheduled to arrive in exactly 5 minutes. The writer suddenly looked around. Their eyes widened. The letter was gone. Panic replaced every other emotion. They searched beneath cushions, inside drawers, across the table. Nothing. Someone asked, "What are you looking for?" No reply came. Because how could they explain? The only physical proof of years of hidden love had vanished. 5 minutes. That was all. 5 minutes before everything written with sleepless nights, trembling hands, and unstoppable hope would disappear forever. The search became frantic. Boxes were opened. Cabinets emptied. Old photographs scattered across the floor once again. Every second mattered. Outside, the distant sound of a truck engine echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Closer. 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 Inside the writer's mind, painful thoughts raced endlessly. Maybe this was destiny saying the letter was never supposed to exist. Maybe silence would always win. Maybe some stories were meant to remain unfinished forever. But another voice inside whispered something different. If the paper disappears, the feelings won't. Because love written on paper can be destroyed. Love carried inside a heart cannot. Meanwhile, far away, The intended reader suddenly experienced something impossible to explain. Without warning, they stopped walking, looked behind them. Their chest tightened, as though someone desperately needed them. No message appeared on their phone. No call arrived. Yet they couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something important was happening at that exact moment. Coincidences rarely arrive alone. Sometimes hearts recognize each other long before minds understand why. Back at the family home, the truck had reached the front gate. 1 minute remained. The writer rushed outside. The recycling bin stood beside the sidewalk. Hundreds of papers filled it. Wind began lifting loose pages into the air. The driver prepared the controls. Metal arms slowly reached toward the container. The writer ran faster than they had ever run before. Not because of paper, but because every sentence inside represented courage they had spent years trying to find. The truck paused. Only briefly. The driver checked something inside the cabin. 30 seconds. The writer reached the bin. Hands searched desperately through endless papers. Receipts. Advertisements. Newspapers. Old calendars. Bills. Not the letter. 20 seconds. A sudden gust of wind lifted dozens of pages into the sky. White paper danced through sunlight like scattered memories refusing to disappear. Then, something familiar. A folded envelope. Caught against the edge of the bin. Almost invisible. The writer reached forward. Fingertips touched it. Just as another strong breeze swept across the street. The envelope slipped away. Rising higher. Floating beyond reach. The family watched from the front door in complete silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The letter drifted across the sky like a promise deciding whether to stay, or leave forever. And at that exact same moment, miles away, the person it had always belonged to looked up at the sky for no reason at all. As though somewhere beyond distance, an invisible thread had just been pulled. The envelope spun through the afternoon sky like a tiny white bird searching for a place to land. It twisted above rooftops, drifted over fences, and danced between branches as though the wind itself had chosen not to destroy it just yet. Everyone standing outside watched in stunned silence. The writer could only stare. Their heart pounded so loudly it drowned out every other sound. That letter was never supposed to leave their hands. It carried years of unspoken feelings, hidden dreams, and promises they had never been brave enough to speak aloud. Losing it now felt like watching an entire chapter of their life disappear into the horizon. The envelope floated higher. Then, unexpectedly, it struck the branch of an old tree. For one brief moment it remained caught between two leaves, trembling with every breeze. Hope returned. The writer hurried toward the tree. But before they could reach it, another gust swept through the neighborhood. The branch shook. The envelope broke free once more. This time it drifted beyond the garden wall. No one could see where it landed. A heavy silence settled over everyone. One of the older family members finally spoke. Maybe fate doesn't want this hidden anymore. Those words lingered in the air. The writer lowered their eyes. For years they had believed silence was the safest choice. Speaking their heart had always seemed too dangerous. Rejection felt unbearable. Losing the friendship seemed even worse. So they had written instead. Page after page. Night after night. The letter had become the conversation they never had. Now that conversation was somewhere beyond reach. Inside the house, the family gathered around the dining table. No one laughed. No one returned to cleaning. Instead, everyone kept thinking about the words they had already read. One sentence in particular remained unforgettable. Even if we never belong to each other, I will always be grateful that you unknowingly taught my heart what genuine kindness feels like. That single sentence changed something. The family had expected a childish crush. Instead, they discovered quiet devotion. Not obsession. Not fantasy. Respect. Patience. Gentle admiration. It was impossible not to feel moved. One relative sighed softly. I've never seen love described like that. Another nodded. They never asked for anything in return. The room became quiet once again. Meanwhile, miles away, you continued through your ordinary day. Nothing unusual had happened. You answered messages, finished small tasks, smiled politely at strangers. Yet something refused to leave your mind. A strange feeling lingered inside your chest. It felt almost like remembering someone whose face you couldn't quite see. You paused beside a cafe window. Without understanding why, your thoughts wandered toward the past. Old conversations resurfaced. Forgotten smiles. Moments that once seemed ordinary suddenly felt important. There had been someone. Someone who always listened more than they spoke. Someone whose eyes quietly brightened whenever you entered the room. Someone who disappeared before you ever understood why. For years you assumed life had simply carried both of you in different directions. You never imagined another story had been unfolding in silence. Back at the family home, the writer entered their bedroom. Everything looked exactly as it always had. The desk, the lamp, the books, the empty chair beside the window. Only now the room felt unfamiliar. The hidden secret was no longer hidden. A notebook rested inside the top drawer. Slowly they opened it. Inside were dozens of unfinished letters. Some were only 3 lines long. Others stretched across multiple pages. Every one addressed to the same unnamed person. None had ever been sent. The writer smiled sadly. So many chances. So much fear. They turned another page. Another memory appeared. It described the first meeting. Not dramatically. Not romantically. Simply. You smiled at someone else that day. I wasn't even part of the conversation. But seeing how kindly you treated a complete stranger made me believe good people still existed. The writer closed the notebook. Outside the bedroom door, footsteps approached. A gentle knock followed. It was the oldest member of the family. Without waiting for permission, they stepped inside. For a long moment neither person spoke. Finally they sat beside the window. "I wish you had trusted us." The writer looked down. "I didn't trust myself." Silence returned. Then came another question. "Do they know?" A slow shake of the head. "No. Not even a little?" "No." The older relative smiled gently. "Then maybe it's time they do." Those words echoed through the room. For the first time in years, the impossible suddenly felt possible. Not because everything had become easy, but because the secret no longer belonged to only one heart. Elsewhere, the missing envelope rested quietly beneath a wooden park bench several streets away. A little girl noticed it while chasing a bright red ball. She picked it up, looked at the handwriting. The envelope had no address, no stamp. Only one word written neatly across the front. "Someday." The child tilted her head curiously. Before she could open it, her father called her name. She hurried away, placing the envelope on the bench beside her forgotten toy. Minutes later, an elderly gardener arrived to water nearby flowers. He noticed the envelope, carefully picked it up, smiled. What a strange place for hope to be left behind. He tucked it safely into his coat pocket. Not to steal it. Simply to keep it from the rain clouds now gathering overhead. Far away, dark clouds slowly crossed the evening sky. The first drops of rain began falling. The writer stood by the bedroom window watching the storm arrive. Rain had always reminded them of the day everything changed. The first conversation. The shared umbrella. The smile that quietly became unforgettable. Perhaps that was why every rainfall carried both comfort and sadness. Their phone suddenly vibrated. An unknown number. For a moment they considered ignoring it. Instead, they answered. No voice. Only silence. Then the line disconnected. They stared at the screen. Confused. Across town. You looked down at your own phone. You had accidentally dialed an unfamiliar number while searching through old contacts. Without realizing it, the call had reached the very person who had spent years wishing for exactly that moment. Neither of you knew. Neither of you understood how close destiny had just come. Sometimes life whispers before it speaks loudly. Sometimes the smallest accidents begin the greatest journeys. That evening, the family gathered once more. This time there were no debates. Only encouragement. One relative finally said what everyone had begun believing. If those feelings survived this many years, they deserve at least one honest conversation. The writer looked around the room. For the first time, fear no longer seemed as powerful. Outside, rain washed the streets clean. Across the city, the elderly gardener reached his small cottage. He removed the damp envelope from his pocket and placed it carefully on a wooden table beside a glowing lamp. Only then did he notice something remarkable. The rain had soaked almost every paper he carried. Except one. The mysterious envelope remained perfectly dry. He frowned thoughtfully. Almost as if it had been protected. He turned it over. No sender. No recipient. Only that single handwritten word. Someday. The gardener smiled. Perhaps tomorrow, this finds the person it has been waiting for. He placed it safely inside an old book before going to bed. Neither he nor anyone else realized that this simple act had just saved a love story from being lost forever. And somewhere, under the same night sky, two hearts that believed they were strangers again unknowingly moved one step closer to finally meeting the truth. Morning arrived quietly, but it carried the kind of stillness that often comes before life changes forever. Sunlight slipped through the curtains of the small cottage where the elderly gardener lived. As he prepared his morning tea, his eyes drifted toward the old book resting on the table. Inside it, the mysterious envelope waited. He carefully removed it and studied the handwriting once more. Only one word decorated the front. Someday. It felt less like a title and more like a promise. The gardener had spent many years watching flowers bloom in their own time. He believed that some things could never be rushed. Seeds, forgiveness, and love all shared one quiet lesson, forcing them only delayed their beauty. Perhaps this letter was no different. Meanwhile, across town, the writer awoke after another sleepless night. Their thoughts returned immediately to the missing letter. Every sentence was still memorized. Every word remained alive inside their heart. But the paper itself was gone. They wondered whether that was a sign to finally stop hiding. Standing before the bedroom mirror, they whispered softly. If destiny wanted the letter to disappear, maybe it's asking me to become brave instead. For the first time, those words didn't feel impossible. Downstairs, the family was already awake. Breakfast sat untouched on the table. No one seemed interested in eating. Instead, they were quietly discussing something important. One relative looked toward the staircase. When are you going to tell them? The writer hesitated. I don't even know where to begin. Another family member smiled gently. You begin with the truth. Simple. Honest. Terrifying. Yet somehow comforting. Elsewhere. You started your day exactly as always. You answered emails. Walked familiar streets. Smiled politely at people passing by. Still. The strange feeling from yesterday refused to disappear. It was as though someone had spoken your name without making a sound. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Years ago, someone had once looked at you as if they wanted to say something important. You remembered noticing it. You also remembered waiting. But the conversation never happened. Eventually life moved forward. Or so you believed. Back inside the gardener's cottage, he finally made a decision. The envelope deserved to find its owner. He couldn't explain why he felt so certain, but something about it seemed unfinished. After placing it safely inside his coat pocket, he walked toward the nearby community center. Every week, people visited to check lost and found notices, missing pets, forgotten wallets, and misplaced belongings. Perhaps someone would recognize it. Hours passed. Many people entered. Many people left. No one asked about a mysterious letter. Then, a young volunteer noticed the envelope. "What's that?" The gardener smiled. "A story waiting for the right reader." She laughed softly. "Can I see it?" He handed it over. She turned it carefully. Still no names. No address. Only beautiful handwriting. Curiosity tempted her to open it. Instead, she returned it untouched. Some secrets belong only to the people who live them. The gardener nodded. Exactly. Meanwhile, the writer found themselves standing outside an old cafe. It was the same place where years earlier they had almost confessed everything. The same chair still stood beside the window. The same flowers decorated the entrance. Only time had changed. They quietly took a seat. Ordered the same drink. Watched strangers come and go.